Yeah, I spend a lot of time driving back and forth between jobs. This is one of those days where I'm going to work roughly 16 hours or more. Started at 7 this morning, and indirectly I expect it to be 11 o'clock midnight before I'm done today, in part because yesterday our truck was down for some repairs or planned repairs, and partly because it's just the way some of these clients insist on certain things done at certain times. So it gives me a lot of time in between to do stuff and view things, and in some cases think about stuff, right? I just watched a video by Anthony Boyd, the infamous or famous runeslinger, depending on how you want to look at it. This individual lives in South Korea, an expat, who's a very astute, very collected individual when it comes to this hobby that we all share and enjoy. And him and his associates are currently playing a game in Circle of Hands. This is Ron Edwards' published game. Another very astute and articulated individual that I feel privileged to have moderate conversations with on a very rare occasion. And the topic that Anthony was discussing it's called crosses, and it's part of this crosses, bangs, and tripwires. And it's I don't want to say a mechanic as much as a technique that's very commonly used, though a lot of people don't recognize that we do so if we're creating, if we're the dungeon master, the game master, the storyteller, or what have you. It's hard to quantify that sometimes. The particular game, like I said, is Circle of Hands, but the subject material is more importantly. Crosses can be difficult to describe, and yet they're very subtle to use if you use it right. And it took me a couple videos, going through this guy's video a couple times to kind of let it sink in a little bit. It's very bad for you. Once the pop's done, though, I have bottles of water over there to place in it. Trying desperately to cut back in my consumption of sugary sweets that have come full circle on me. It's a terrible thing. I lost a lot of weight a few years ago. Now I'm back on again. This stuff is not helping. It's terrible. So crosses, putting things or signs into the backdrop to indicate what's going on elsewhere, so the characters come across this info indirectly. It's one of several pieces of this, and I use this technique quite often. I like to develop this circle, layered effect in the game world for my players. And so often, if the environment has gone south, if there's a situation that has a lot of people are being affected by potentially, I will put signs of it in the background. Just like I will try to give a flavor or a taste of the campaign setting, the world that these characters are playing in, by dropping subtle hints here and there, as opposed to having rambling diatribes and having post-scripted descriptions at the beginning of each encounter or each session. It's kind of hard for you can give the players a handout at the beginning of the game, but if the game lasts for months and you've got 10 sessions, 20 sessions later, everything in that, unless they have a habit of going back and rereading earlier material, most of that stuff is gone over the head. At this point, the characters should be vested in the world and have an idea of what the flavor that they're looking for is, and what the world around them is like, in my opinion. Now, in a current game setting that I'm running my play-by-post, there are several adventures interlinking, kind of wrapping around each other. are separate, but the characters are bouncing back and forth between different bits and pieces. It's to keep things flowing when other things slow down. Also to give more depth to the city that they're playing in. And in about 7 or 8 game days, they're going to have a huge festival. And slowly the signs of this festival are being speckled in here and there, so you can see people getting prepared for this festival. And there's also some subterfuge going on beneath the surface. This festival is held over from ancient times, and it is at the same a celebration, but it's also an abject warning to the peasants and the people of this city to remember a terrible part of their past. That's beginning to, what the players are beginning to discover is that there may be a resurgence, and there's a reason that more people need to be made aware of, so they can nip this resurgence in the bud before it becomes a plague-like problem like it had been once upon a time. And to get to that point, I'm trying to be subtle without being too subtle. My days of taking a hammer and bludgeoning something into people until they get it are pretty much in the past. I don't like to play that way anymore. I can do it, I just don't care for it, right? So putting these crosses out, these signs that link things together, is one of those trips, one of those techniques. The other part to this was character A is doing something at the table while the rest of the party are basically the players back there indirectly involved by watching the interaction of the other player or character A. And in the process, the rest of the party has seen or experienced whatever character A was doing. So later, you can add details in the background that all will identify with speed played by reducing or eliminating the need to repeat the subject material. So theoretically speaking, in the more novice games I've played in the past or ran in the past, we play a variation of telephone where character A hears something or discovers something and then has to relay it to character B, who characters go and relates it to character C, or character A relates it to the entire group, basically recapping what it was that they learned or encountered. This is time consuming, and for a lot of players, especially in this day and environment, we want to avoid a lot of repetitive mediocrity, if you will. This doesn't play the same in my particular style of narrative story-based play-by-post, because each character has their own unique perspective. So if character A talked to an NPC about some kind of thing, characters B, C, and D, if they weren't in the room or said some other means of eavesdropping, are not privy to what that conversation was and how much of it was pertinent. So at some point, character A either relates it to them in their own way, which can be detrimental to the group if some detail is left out, or it can allow for a little more complex set of play. But that's a different style. That's a very special style that very few people can seem to be able to dial into, which is fine. I mean, I get it. But I also have used this technique, this second part of the cross, the technique, where I putting up a signpost. The crosses, to me, it might have been better to phrase it as a signpost, but it's not my game system, and I can relate to what the designer Ron Edwards was going for when he chose this particular verbiage. Okay, so by the fact that if you're sitting at your table or a digital version where you're play by video, PBV, right? PBV. You play by video, so everybody has the opportunity to understand and see what one lone character gets to experience, the rest of them indirectly have knowledge, or what would be considered OCC, or out of character knowledge. Okay, doesn't really matter, because it eliminates the necessary need to be repetitive, to go through this over and over and over again. In my version of storytelling, I don't go around that, because each individual perspective is just that. So if the characters are in the same room, they're all hearing the same thing, more or less. If they're in different locations, then it wasn't meant for them to hear. And if they need to gather some information, I'll either give it to them in another creative way, or I'll leave it up to the other group of characters to make their decisions and their participation part to decide how to pass that information along, or if to do so, and for whatever motivations they're in. And pretty good stuff, I think. I'm interested to see his take on the Bang and on the Tripwire. I think I'll have to do a video on each one of my opinion and my uses thereof. Till next time, keep your cord out of the way.